Hey there, this is Rene for Network Lessons. In this video I'll give you a quick introduction of why SDN is becoming more and more popular these days. So what we have here is a data center network. And what do we see here? So first of all, we have a VMware server with a couple of virtual machines. We have an access layer, so that's layer 2. We have an aggregation layer, so this is where we do our routing. We got a couple of ASAs, so that's where we do stuff like access lists, VPN. And we have these routers, and these are used for the connection to the outside world. Okay, so let's say that in this network we are going to create a new virtual machine. And this virtual machine is going to run a new application. And this application should be isolated from the rest of our network. So spinning up this new virtual machine might only take a minute. Installing the application doesn't take too long. But let's think about all the things we have to do on the network to make this application reachable. So, for example, okay, so we got the VM. So on these switches over here, we will have to create a new VLAN. That's one thing. You might have to make some changes to spanning tree. On these switches, we might have to run OSPF to advertise the new subnet that we use with the new VLAN. You also have to create a new default gateway. So maybe we are going to use HSRP or VRRP. That's something we have to configure. On our firewalls, you might have to create some new statements in the access list. Maybe the VPN server. And we also have these routers over here. You might have to advertise the new subnet. So maybe you have to configure BGP or something. Okay, so there's quite some stuff we have to do on the network. And most of these changes we have to do it manually, because we use the CLI, the command line interface, to configure all of these routers, switches and firewalls. So we create this new virtual machine, new application, maybe takes a minute to create this new virtual machine, and then it takes a really long time to configure the entire network to support this new virtual machine and its application. So, okay, so we use the CLI right now to configure this network. Now, of course, there is some network automation. There are some scripts that we can use to configure this network, your routers, your switches, and so on. But even writing these scripts does take quite some time, and it's still based on the CLI and maybe SNMP. Now, one of the issues with the CLI is that it was created for humans. So the CLI was created for us. The CLI is not so good for computers and software. If you have ever tried to create a script to configure your switches, it can be a pain because you have to write something that uses SSH to log into your switch, and then run some show commands, and then you try to configure something. It's not really easy. So what we want to do is we want to make this a bit easier. So what we are going to do, instead of using the CLI to configure this network ourselves or with our network scripts, what we are going to do is use something else. We're going to use something called SDN. And the idea behind SDN is that as soon as we create this new VM, it should trigger something So we will have a piece of software. So we create a new virtual machine, then it triggers something, and then we are going to use something called an Sdn controller. And this controller, it will control the entire network. So this Sdn controller is going to configure all of these network devices automatically. So we create a new virtual machine, it triggers something in software, and then the Sdn controller will configure the entire network for us. It will create new VLANs, it will configure routing, it will configure the VPN settings and so on. And the advantage of doing something like this is that it's much faster. You don't need a human to configure this network. You create a new virtual machine and then automatically behind the scenes the entire network will be configured for us. So this is one of the reasons why Sdn is becoming more popular. It's much faster if we have a software solution that can configure this entire network for us. Now, how Sdn works and what an Sdn controller is like and so on, that's something I will cover in another video. But I hope this video has helped a bit to understand why Sdn is becoming more popular. Anyway, thanks for watching and till next time.